The boy asked the question so simply. No fear in it. No filter. Just a 6-year-old's honest curiosity aimed straight up at the tallest man in the room. "Why are you staring at my mom?" The corridor went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with sound. Zara's hand stopped reaching for Theo's shoulder. Her lungs forgot what they were supposed to do. And Beckett Hargrove, the man whose face had been on the cover of 3 business magazines in the last 18 months, the man whose name was on the building they were standing in, looked down at that little boy and went completely, dangerously still. He didn't answer Theo. He looked at Zara. And in 7 years of convincing herself she had made the right call, nothing, not one moment, had prepared her for the look on his face right now. Let me tell you how we got here. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you emotional stories that stay with you. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you never miss a story. And if you're returning, thank you. Your support means everything. Now stay until the end, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let's begin. The charity gala was not Zara's idea. Her business partner Keisha had submitted their events firm for the contract 6 weeks earlier without telling her. When Zara found out, her first instinct was to pull the bid. Her second instinct, the one that paid her mortgage and Theo's school fees, told her to stop being ridiculous. The Hargrove Grand Chicago was the most talked about hotel opening on the East Coast calendar. Landing the gala contract meant visibility she couldn't buy. It meant referrals. It meant her firm, Baptiste and Company, moving from solid to untouchable. She had a son to raise and a business to grow, and exactly 0 room for decisions based on personal history. So she told herself it was fine. She was a professional. Beckett Hargrove was a client she would never actually see. Men like him didn't walk their own corridors during setup week. That was what staff were for. She had been wrong about that before. The drive from Atlanta to Chicago had taken 2 days because Theo decided somewhere in Tennessee that airplanes were, in his new and firm opinion, not something he wanted to do anymore. Zara's mother had planned to fly up and take him for the week, but her knee surgery had gotten pushed forward and that plan dissolved on a Tuesday afternoon phone call. So Theo came with her. He rode in the back seat eating goldfish crackers and narrating a made-up story about a race car driver named Captain Bolt, and Zara drove with both hands on the wheel and told herself everything was going to be fine. She almost believed it. Setup day was a Thursday. The Grand Monarch Ballroom was on the 4th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, 12-foot ceilings, the kind of space that made you want to stand straighter just being in it. Zara had her clipboard and her earpiece and her rolling kit bag. Theo had his backpack, his tablet, and strict instructions to sit in the corner chair and not touch anything that looked expensive. He lasted 40 minutes before wandering off. She didn't notice immediately. She was deep in a conversation with the venue's florist about centerpiece height, one eye on the table arrangement, one hand making notes. When she turned around and the corner chair was empty, her chest kicked. "Theo." She kept her voice low and even. "Theo." She moved through the half-dressed ballroom, past the catering team setting up linen stations, past the lighting crew arguing about angles. No Theo. She stepped into the corridor outside and looked left. He was at the far end of the hallway. Standing in front of a man, looking straight up at him. Zara's feet moved before her brain finished processing the image. The corridor was long and warmly lit, amber wall sconces casting a glow across the cream marble floor. She registered the man's height first, then his shoulders, then the white dress shirt, sleeves rolled, top button open, then the jaw she had spent years deliberately forgetting. Beckett Hargrove was standing 15 feet away from her son. Her feet stopped. He hadn't seen her yet. He was looking down at Theo with an expression she couldn't read from this distance, something carefully neutral, The way a person looks when they are working very hard to appear unbothered by something that has just hit them sideways. Theo was doing what Theo always did with strangers, assessing. Head tilted. Eyes wide and earnest. Completely comfortable in his own skin in that way 6-year-olds are before the world teaches them not to be. Zara made herself walk forward. Each step was deliberate. Her face was professional. Her heart was not. She had 4 seconds to reach them before Theo turned, registered her approaching, turned back to Beckett, and asked the question. "Why are you staring at my mom?" The world shrank to the width of that corridor. Beckett looked up. The first thing she saw was that he hadn't changed. Not in the ways that mattered. There were faint lines at the corners of his eyes now, and his jaw was harder than she remembered, but the eyes were exactly the same, that particular shade of hazel that sat somewhere between brown and green depending on the light, currently reading somewhere between unreadable and lethal. He looked at her for 3 full seconds without speaking. Then very quietly he said, "Zara." Not a question. Not a greeting. Just her name in his mouth, like he was confirming something to himself. Beckett. She stopped beside Theo and placed her hand on her son's shoulder. "I'm sorry," he wandered off. "We're here for the Aldridge Foundation setup." She said it like a sentence on a form. Clean. Businesslike. She would not let her voice shake. She had not let it shake in 7 years, and she was not going to start in a hotel corridor. "Come on, Theo." Theo did not move. He was still looking at Beckett with that wide, curious calm. Beckett crouched down. Slowly. Deliberately. Until he was at eye level with Theo, and Zara's hand tightened on her son's shoulder without meaning to. "What's your name?" Beckett asked him. "Theo." He held out a hand. "I'm 6. Something moved across Beckett's face so fast Zara almost missed it. His jaw tightened. He shook Theo's hand with the same gravity Theo had offered it. "Nice to meet you, Theo. I'm Beckett. Do you work here?" "I own it." Theo considered this with the seriousness it deserved. "So you're kind of like the captain." "Something like that." Zara said, "We need to get back," and her voice came out steadier than she deserved credit for. Beckett stood. He was looking at her now in a way that made the corridor feel like a smaller space than it was. Like the 12 feet of marble floor between the wall and the opposite wall had become something tighter and more pressurized. "How long are you in Chicago?" he asked. 4 days. "And the gala is Saturday?" "Yes." "I'll be there Saturday." He said it the way someone says something they are telling themselves, not the other person. Then quieter, "We should talk." Zara's throat tightened. "There's nothing to talk about." Something shifted in his expression. It wasn't anger. It was more careful than anger. "I think there might be." His eyes dropped to Theo for one moment, just one, and then came back to her face. "But I won't push it tonight." He nodded once. Then he turned and walked back down the corridor the way he'd come, unhurried, hands in his pockets, and Zara stood very still until the sound of his footsteps faded completely. Theo looked up at her. "Mom, your hand is really tight." She loosened her grip on his shoulder. Exhaled. Crouched down and straightened the collar of his jacket that didn't need straightening. "Sorry, baby." "Do you know that man?" "A little. A long time ago." She stood. "Come on. We have work to do." She did not look back down the corridor. She had met Beckett Hargrove on a Tuesday in October years ago, when she was 28 and working as a junior coordinator for a corporate events company in New York. He had come in to arrange a private dinner for 12, a family board meeting, he'd said, and the way he said it told her it was the kind of family meeting where the food was incidental and the decisions were final. He wasn't arrogant about it. That was the part that caught her off guard. He was direct and a little formal, and he made eye contact when he spoke, which in a city of people staring at phones felt almost radical. She handled his booking. He came back a week later to adjust the seating arrangement and ended up staying for 40 minutes. They talked about Chicago. He had a hotel project in development there, and she had grown up in Atlanta but had family on the South Side. They talked about the kind of food that only tastes right when someone's grandmother made it. He told her about his Irish-American family in Boston, the Sunday dinners that ran 4 hours, the pressure that came with being the eldest son of a man who had built a real estate empire from one apartment building in 1987. The second visit turned into coffee. The coffee turned into 3 months that Zara never quite had a word for. Not a relationship in the way she would have defined it. But not nothing either. Something warm and specific and real, the kind of thing you carry with you long after it's over because it shaped something in you that you didn't know needed shaping. Then came the call from his mother. Polite. Precise. The kind of polite that is a sharper weapon than rudeness. His family had someone in mind for him. Had always had someone in mind. A girl from the right family in the right zip code with the right background. And wasn't Zara a lovely person, but wasn't this all getting a little serious for what it actually was? Zara had hung up the phone and sat in her apartment kitchen for a very long time. She had not told Beckett about the call. She had waited. 1 week. 2 weeks. Watching for any sign that he would push back against his family's plan. Any sign that what they had was something he would choose publicly and loudly and without asterisks. The sign did not come. Then she found out she was pregnant. And she called him. And she left a voicemail because he didn't pick up. He never called back. Not once. She waited 3 weeks. She packed her things. She moved back to Atlanta where her mother and her aunts and her grandmother's memory and the smell of sweet potato pie in November were more reliable than any man's silence. She built a life. She built a business. She raised Theo. She did not think about Beckett Hargrove. Or she tried not to. She got reasonably good at it. That night, after Theo fell asleep in the hotel room with his tablet on his chest and a cartoon still running, Zara sat on the edge of the bed and let herself do what she had refused to do all evening. She thought about his face when he looked at Theo. Not the neutral professional mask. The thing underneath it. The thing that had moved across his features for half a second before he locked it down. She had told herself for 6 years that she had made the right call. That his silence had answered every question. That a man who could receive a voicemail like that and go quiet had made his position clear. She still believed that. She just hadn't expected the grief of it to still feel this fresh. She picked up her phone. Put it down. Picked it up again and opened her messages and typed a half-sentence to Keisha and then deleted it and set the phone face down on the nightstand. Theo shifted in his sleep. Mumbled something about Captain Bolt. Pulled the duvet tighter with his little fists. Zara watched her son sleep and felt the weight of 7 years pressing down on her chest like a hand. She had until Saturday. She had no idea what she was going to do with that. Quick pause. If you're feeling this story, hype it so others can find it. Comment where you're watching from. Now back to the story. Saturday arrived the way dread always does. Quietly, and too fast. The ballroom looked exactly the way Zara had designed it. Ivory linens, deep burgundy florals, candlelight that turned the room amber and soft. The kind of room that made people feel like the best version of themselves. She stood near the entrance at 7:15 and watched guests filter in and told herself she was simply doing her job. Beckett arrived at 7:40. He came through the main doors with 2 people from his team and stopped to greet the foundation director, and Zara watched him from across the room and made a decision. She was going to get through this evening. She was going to be professional and invisible and collect her final payment and drive back to Atlanta on Sunday and never bid on a Hargrove property again. She had made it to 8:30 when he found her. She was standing near the service corridor checking something on her clipboard when she heard him behind her. "You've been avoiding me." She turned around. He was alone. Jacket on now, tie loosened slightly, glass of water in one hand. He looked tired in a way that expensive suits couldn't quite cover. "I've been working," she said. "Zara." "Beckett, this is not the place." "Then tell me the place, and I'll be there." She looked at him steadily. "There is no place. There's nothing to discuss. We had something a long time ago, and it ended and we both moved on." "Did we?" It wasn't a question. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. He set his glass down on the nearby table and turned back to her with the careful stillness of someone who has rehearsed this and is now abandoning the script. "I never got your voicemail," he said. The clipboard lowered slightly in her hand. "I know how that sounds," he continued. "I know exactly how that sounds, and I'm not asking you to believe it tonight. But I need you to hear it. I never got it. I found out 3 months ago what my father did. He had your number blocked from my phone. He intercepted the message. He told me you had moved on." A muscle worked in his jaw. "I spent 7 years thinking you just walked away." Zara's mouth was dry. "You're telling me this now?" "I'm telling you this the second I had you in front of me long enough to say it." "That's very convenient, Beckett." "I know. Your family made it clear what category I fell into. Your mother called me. Did you know that? She called me and she was very polite and very specific about what I was and what I wasn't, and I waited for you to say something different and you never did." Something broke open in his expression. "She called you." 2 weeks before I found out I was pregnant." He turned away from her briefly. One hand pressed flat against the wall. She watched his shoulders rise and fall with a slow, controlled breath. "I didn't know," he said, his voice lower now. "Zara. I didn't know any of it." She believed him. That was the part that made it worse. She had spent years constructing a version of events where his silence was a choice, and that choice had its own clean logic. This was not cleaner. This was much more complicated and much harder to carry. "It doesn't change what happened," she said. Her voice was steady, but it cost her something. "I raised him alone. I built my life without you in it. Theo doesn't know you exist." "I know." His voice was rough. "I'm not here to blow up his world. I'm not that person. But I can't unknow what I know now. And I can't look at that boy and pretend I don't see what I see." Zara felt something crack open in her chest. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way ice gives way in early spring, barely audible until it's already happening. "He looks like your father," she said. It came out before she decided to say it. Around the eyes. Beckett's throat moved. "He shook my hand," he said. And the way he said it was not funny and not sad. It was something in between that had no clean name. They stood there in the service corridor with the gala humming 30 feet away, string quartet threading through the walls, and neither of them spoke for a long moment. "I'm not asking you to fix everything tonight," Beckett said finally. "I'm not asking you to forgive me for a silence I didn't choose but that still happened. I'm asking you for a conversation. A real one. Not in a corridor. Not with a clipboard in your hand." He looked at her. "Theo deserves to know where he comes from. I think you've known that for a while." Her eyes stung. She did not look away from him. "He's a good kid," she said quietly. "He's the best person I know." "I believe that." He said it like he meant it completely. She looked down at the clipboard in her hands. Then she set it on the table beside his abandoned glass. She breathed in once, slowly, and let it out. "I'm leaving Sunday afternoon," she said. "I'll be free Sunday morning." She nodded. Once. Small. The kind of nod that is not a resolution, but is the first step toward one. He didn't push further. He picked up his glass and looked at her one more time and then walked back toward the ballroom. She stayed in the corridor a little longer. Her hands were still. Her breathing had steadied. Through the wall she could hear the music and the gentle collisions of 100 people in conversation, and somewhere above all of it the high clean sound of laughter. She thought about Theo. About the way he had held out his hand to a stranger with complete confidence. About all the things he carried in his face and his hands and his easy boldness that she had never found the right words to explain to him. He was 6 years old and he had unknowingly cracked open a door she had spent years keeping shut. Maybe that was the point of children. They walked through the world without your armor on. They asked the honest question. They shook the hand. She smoothed her blazer, picked up her clipboard, walked back into the ballroom and did her job with full attention because that was who she was and no single corridor conversation was going to change that. But Sunday was already sitting in the back of her mind, quiet and significant. Something was beginning. She did not know yet what shape it would take. She only knew that the 7 years of silence had finally, in the voice of a 6-year-old boy with his father's eyes, come to an end. What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. And if you want to know how this story ends, what happens when Beckett and Zara sit down on Sunday morning, and how Theo eventually learns the truth, comment part 2 below. If this story moved you, hit subscribe for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means the world. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this one. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.